No, you don't need the.
I'm doing this, by the way. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend. He a legend, he a legend, he a legend.
Talking on it though, then
He
you
a
can't put it
legend.
up later.
Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items. Welcome to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league, to the league of items.
Yo, what's up everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and in this video I'm going to go over some of the BBM teams that I drafted, the exposures and things like that. The lineups I wanted to look at specifically in this video are the first team I drafted, the last team I drafted, the team with the highest CLV, lowest CLV, highest projection, and lowest projection. Personally, I don't put any stock into the projection number that Underdog spits out, so I just kind of wanted to see what the both sides of the spectrum looked like. So let's just kind of get into it. So first, let's do the first team that I drafted. This is fantasylife.com. So it's a 2673, average CLV 1.9. Really not an important metric. This graph really doesn't show much from Fantasy Life. Fantasy Life is good but not great. I'm not sure if I'll use it next year. One of the reasons I wanted to use it was because they said they were going to have a DFS tool for the year, but I'm not even sure if they're going to have that now. So I may regret that, but it's supporting some of the streamers that I like watching, so it's not that big of a deal. So let's just go through the different areas of the team, not thinking so much about pick. I can do that as the secondary part. So first I have Justin Fields and Bryce Young. That's a pretty sketchy QB room going into the summer. I was probably just thinking Justin Fields has a chance to be a good naked QB option for a lot of the year. Bryce Young, if I had like Teteroa McMillan on this as well, maybe I'd feel better about this roster, but I have Justin Fields and Bryce Young. Bijan, Caleb Johnson, who sentiment kind of dropped a lot on throughout the summer. In the beginning, the way I was thinking about it is, Najee Harris leaves. Caleb Johnson had a decent college career according to most of the people that were following the drafts, and decent measurables and all those types of things, and I just think the opportunity is going to be there. So we may not feel as good about it as I did in the beginning of the summer, but I still think he has a good chance to be impactful throughout the year. DeAndre Swift, I like DeAndre Swift. I used to have him in a dynasty league, and he when he was on the Lions, and he always did fine. I think the cost is reasonable, getting him at pick 74. Travis Etienne, he fluctuated a ton throughout the summer. Obviously, people were wondering if Bashal Tutin or Tank Bigsby were going to take over the backfield during the summer, or like trade away Etienne, trade away Bigsby. We haven't seen any of that yet, but in the middle of the summer, this felt like a horrible pick. But by the end of it, it seems fine. The CLV is within 4 picks. Who cares? I got decent value on Zach Charbonnet, decent value on J.K. Dobbins, who people. I think as the season got closer, people thought about the beginning of the season as something that we do like points in general, and he should have a decent sized role, especially in the beginning of the year. My wide receiver room, I have T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, Xavier Legette, Quentin Johnston. So the Quentin Johnston pick looks bad at this point, obviously. Adam Thielen and Keenan Allen. So this was done early in the summer. So getting Keenan at pick 191 feels great. 64 points of 64 spots of CLV, which is nice. Then we have Trey McBride, and Trey McBride ended up being one of my highest owned players. He was a target of mine for a lot of the summer. He's one of my favorite plays from a best ball perspective. Like you saw in the last video that I posted, I think that the tight end scoring could just be fundamentally different than it's been in the last couple of years. Jatavian Sanders, who stayed around the same pick, but I think there's a lot of positive sentiment around Jatavian Sanders. Maybe I don't have enough exposure to him throughout my portfolio. And then Theo Johnson. I'm a Giants fan. I'm happy to get Theo Johnson. I think that he'll be a pretty good pick, and he's actually somebody I thought was going to rise a lot throughout the summer. But I think that people are still highly skeptical of the Giants and how they'll be. So overall, not a team. I wouldn't be happy drafting this team at the end of the summer, but I took a couple of swings. I'm assuming that during the draft, I probably wanted to do something besides just Justin Fields and Bryce Young. If I had it my way, I would probably only do 2 quarterback builds. This summer was very unique. A lot of people were drafting 3 quarterbacks. which actually made it feel more difficult to do two quarterbacks because people were just kind of taking them off the board in somewhat random areas. But that kind of pushed me towards two quarterback builds a decent amount, and then just taking the like the projectable volume from QBs, like increasing the floor in the late rounds by going after some of the more risky quarterbacks, which you'll see through some of these teams and the exposures. I'm pretty happy with how drafting went this summer. So that was my first team. Let's do the team. We're gonna save the team that I drafted last. We're gonna save that for last. So let's do the team with the lowest CLV. So we have Jaden Daniels, Jackson Dart, and Russell Wilson. So I know a lot of people wouldn't want you to take both of the quarterbacks from the Giants onto one team. I did do it intentionally. I think that Malik Neighbors, if you think that he's going to have a good year, that would kind of mean that Russell Wilson has to play well for at least some of the season. So I'm just kind of banking on the Giants' quarterback position altogether being somewhat helpful. I know that may cap the theoretical upside of the team, but I also have Jaden Daniels. So at the end of the season, if Jackson Dart is not the starting quarterback for the Giants, then Jaden Daniels, and I still have Russell Wilson, which is it ideal? Probably not, but especially at the end of the season, I think people try to do different things that they haven't done in their portfolio, and this was one of the things that I tried to do to be different. Yes, you do have to thread the needle. It's like a low percentage outcome, but it's still possible to be helpful. And this is more about just having live players in the playoffs. The one thing I'd be afraid of if I was drafting only Russell Wilson or only Jackson Dart on a two quarterback team is that, they're not playing during the important weeks. I do think that there's a possibility Russell Wilson plays for the entire season. Everybody's very positive about the Giants right now. My running back room, and this is really where I lost like a ton of the CLV value, but I don't feel horrible about it. So Tony Pollard, by this point in the season, everybody was pretty happy drafting Tony Pollard way ahead of his ADP because of the Tyjae Spears injury. Then I have Tank Bigsby and Bashal Tutin. So the idea there was get two cracks at not only the Jacksonville Jaguars backfield, but theoretically, if Tank Bigsby is traded at some point during the season, I may have the RB1 for two different teams if Bashal Tutin also takes over Travis Etienne. As the summer went on, Bashal Tutin really felt like a great selection. Then I had to take him ahead of ADP, but the goal was to get a combination of running backs that a lot of people may not have. So I have Pollard, Bigsby, Tutin, Ollie Gordon, who was a huge riser throughout the summer. Again, I know I took him ahead of ADP. That was kind of the goal of this draft. This is more of a go-get-your-guy type of pick instead of like thinking that I'm getting good value out of it. The Achane injury, it doesn't seem like it's going to keep him out for week one, but this was drafted around the time where that was a possibility, which would have been an amazing way to start the season. I do think Ollie Gordon's the kind of player that we're going to be kicking ourselves that we didn't pay more attention throughout the summer to somebody who I know people are kind of, it's already almost turned into a meme with the Doak Walker Award, but watching him in college, you'd have to think that he's going to be a somewhat productive pro, not in terms of being the best athlete in the world, but he's a huge person. And people are questioning whether or not he can catch the ball. I mean, I think he had a 30 catch season where, people talk about some of the other running backs that are coming out of school, call them like a pass catching specialist, and they get like 40 receptions. It's like, you're really telling me that you don't think Ollie Gordon can catch the ball? He had a 30 reception season. Then we have Eckler and Keaton Mitchell. So, at this point, I think Eckler's a decent bet against JCM. Keaton Mitchell is just a contingent upside play. My wide receiver room, the other reason I drafted this way is because I didn't want to have, 8 or 9 receivers. I wanted to take a lot of swings at running back. And I kind of thought that after I made the Malik Neighbors pick in the first round, I thought that I was going to do the thing with Jackson Dart and Russell Wilson at the end. I have a lot of Malik Neighbors, not much Jackson Dart. So I have Malik, A.J. Brown, George Pickens, Zay Flowers, Keon Coleman, Dante Thornton. So you do get the Week 17 bring back with George Pickens and the Commander stack. And it's a different way to play the Commanders. I think that I wanted Debo in this draft but couldn't get him. Keon Coleman could be a good upside play. Zay Flowers, better touchdown, more touchdowns, and he'll look like an amazing pick. Dante Thornton's more of just a flyer for Week 17. May not have a ton of projectable volume, but these are decent wide receivers. So adding the 7th, 8th, 9th wide receiver to this type of room, if I need those scores, then the Malik Neighbors, AJ Brown, George Pickens, and Zay Flowers piece of this may be failing very hard, which maybe it's a dead team anyways. And then for tight ends, I have TJ Hawkinson, Zach Ertz, and Harold Fandon. So again, when you're picking players like Bashul Tutin, Ollie Gordon, Austin Eckler, Harold Fannin on a team, you know that the CLV is not going to be great because they are the types of players that get steamed up, especially at the end of the summer, and you need to go get them ahead of ADP, or you're going to miss out on that. So this is a draft that I don't even feel bad about. It's not a high projection. It's a low CLV. It's like a bottom 1 percentile in terms of CLV. So maybe people could have this type of combination earlier in the summer at better values, but then you're just doing like 2v2s or 3v3s against other players. So I don't feel horrible with this draft. The highest CLV is a Philadelphia stack. So I have Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray. I got both of them at a CLV value. Jonathan Taylor, I'm a huge Jonathan Taylor fan. Breece Hall, I got him right around where he's supposed to go, but I could have theoretically gotten him much later. Travis Etienne fell decently far in this draft. Roshan, this was before Roshan got injured, obviously. And this was right after I think Drew Dinkmeyer said that he was one of his favorite plays. So I did get a decent amount of Roshan right around 8% exposure, so at different costs, but I'm fine with Roshan. It's just not as good of a pick as it felt like at the time. Will Shipley, I do think that he'll have somewhat of a role. I'm recording this on the Thursday where the Eagles and Cowboys are going to play. Day one, exciting. Wide receivers, I have Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, Chris Olave, Jordan Addison, Khalil Shakir, Slot Demon, Jahan Dotson. So for my Philly stack, it is a little different than how people probably got exposure to Jalen Hurts. But I have Will Shipley, who he could be receiving the receiving back option for the Eagles. Jahan Dotson, who it's really just a late round flyer. And then Dallas Goedert, who's a decent tight end. My tight end room, Travis Kelce, Dallas Goedert, and Hunter Henry. It's very bland, but I got all three of them at ADP value. So I like this team. I think that it has maybe a little bit weak of a running back room. But, if Jonathan Taylor carries me most of the season and then I get a touchdown every once in a while from Roshan, or, maybe Saquon misses a week here or there and Will Shipley provides a score, I think that it would be okay. It says it's a 2.773, but it's not. It's a 2.573. But I guess that's not super important. But I actually like this team, and it's not because of the CLV. It's because of the players that I have on the team and the way that they can kind of play off one another. I probably wanted to get someone else with Kyler. I probably missed on Michael Wilson at the end of the draft. That's probably what the goal was there. But it's an okay team. I'm okay with that. Did I get a bring back for? Yeah, so I have Philly with Khalil, and then I have T and Kyler. So not a ton of correlation for Week 17, but I'm okay with that team as well. Next, let's go to the lowest projection. Okay, so we have JJ McCarthy. My last name's McCarthy, so I had to take him at least sometimes. Matthew Stafford, who was dealing with a back injury all summer, so this was before a lot of that news was coming out, so it felt like a better click at the time. But then he ended up losing 20 points of... he ended up going 20 spots later in most drafts as the summer went on because of the back injury questions. Sounds like he's going to play in Week 1, so maybe it's going to end up being a fair price, but not a good price compared to where else he went throughout the summer, and then I took a flyer on Kirk Cousins. I I don't know why I did that. Super low percent that he's relevant, but having one Kirk Cousins team isn't going to kill you, right? Right. Then we have Omari and Hampton as the RB1. Joe Mixon, who may not play football this year, so that feels horrible. So, maybe they're right. Maybe this is going to be a horrible team and do nothing the entire year. Zach Charbonnet, Miles Sanders, Jarquez Hunter. Miles Sanders feels like a bad pick, too. Wide receiver room, Drake London, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Addison, Emeka Egbuka, Kyle Williams, Jalen Naylor, and then TJ Hawkinson and Hunter Henry. So, honestly, I think quarterback is weak. Running back's pretty weak. My wide receiver room is really good, so maybe they can sneak me through. And then the tight ends feel fine. I think that Hawkinson could have a good year. And this is a triple stack with J.J. McCarthy, so if the Vikings are good this year, maybe I could sneak into the playoffs, and maybe Joe Mixon's foot comes back to life at that point. Let's go to the team with the highest projection. So we have Kyler, Cam Ward, Sam Darnold, Jonathan Taylor, Jalen Warren, Cam Scatterbo, Tyjae Spears, Dylan Sampson, Austin Eckler, Rico Dowdle, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. I was definitely setting up a Dak double stack, and somebody sniped me. Devonta, Jaden Reed, Stephon Diggs, Darius Slayton, and then we have Trey McBride and Dalton Kincaid. So I like the tight end room. I'm fine doing tight ends, 2 tight ends. Decent quarterbacks. The running back room is okay. I don't love having Jalen Warren as an RB2. I am a Giants fan, but I'm pretty low on Cam. I'm not sure he's going to be that important this year. I think he's drafted way too high. Was drafted way too high throughout the summer. Tyjae Spears is hurt right now. I like Dylan Sampson a decent amount. He felt like a good click throughout the summer. Austin Eckler, probably undervalued by the community. Yeah, tight end's good. Wide receiver's good. Running back feels somewhat questionable to me. The projections seem kind of funny. That seems like a lot of points projected for Rico Dowdle, and that's probably most of the reason why there's not a lot of stock put into them. They're from the beginning of the year for the most part. So that's that. So we did highest projection, lowest projection, high CLV, low CLV. We did the first team, and now let's do the last team that I drafted. So this was on 8/28. I think this was probably during the Pete Overzet stream, his final day of drafting. So what I wanted to do with this team was a type of draft that would be featured on something like his Deposit Kingdom video, where he talks to another content creator, and they talk about what's your favorite structure, who's your favorite player target, what's your favorite stack, what's your Galaxy brand idea. So for this, my player target, which kind of is combined with the structure that I want, is really, it's called a rainbow draft. I'm not sure how practical it is, but I thought it was a funny idea for a team, and it was able to incorporate a lot of the players that I liked, so I wanted to give it a shot. Basically, the idea is to draft one of each position in the first 4 rounds. The reason why you would want to do that is because it gives you the ability to really compete at every position. So I drafted this from the 1 hole. I had Jamar Chase. Actually, let me see if I can get the draft board from this draft as well. But I had Jamar, and then at the turn, I went with Trey McBride and Lamar Jackson. So I could theoretically have the number 1 player at those 3 positions. Lamar is my favorite to be the QB1. I think that I don't really believe that Josh Allen can have the same number of rushing touchdowns as he did last year, and Lamar didn't even have a great running season last year. This should be the draft board. Come on. All right, there we go. So I'm drafting out of the one hole, obviously. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Whoops. So we have Jamar, Trey McBride, Lamar, Kenneth Walker, and Zay Flowers. So here I get a theoretical shot at the RB1. I don't think that Kenneth Walker is going to be the RB1 overall, but he could give us very good production throughout the year. Kenneth Walker has extreme explosion and upside, and he's in a contract year. I don't know if there's any sports books that would let you get down this kind of action, but my sneaking suspicion is that he will be the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys next year. He has a house in Texas already, and the Cowboys don't really have a running back. Maybe Javonte comes back to life, but I doubt it. Zay Flowers, so I have a stack for Lamar. Then we got Joe Burrow to fall all the way to us. So originally I wasn't going to take Joe Burrow, but there's no reason for me not to take him on this team. Got decent value on him. The other piece of this that I was going to try to do was and this was from a prompt that I did for the Jacob Sanderson and Pete Overzet stream, where I was like, real men. Well, not I didn't make it sexist, but the best Galbraith idea would be only one quarterback, only one tight end, where it's like you get truly elite seasons out of Lamar Jackson and Trey McBride. I don't need a backup. Screw the bye week. I'll just eat the 0. And then as long as that team sneaks through and advances, like if I can still score roughly 1,700 points, then I get into the playoffs. Lamar has to go 3 for 3. Trey McBride has to go 3 for 3, and then separate at the other positions. I know it's extremely impractical. You're better off just drafting, your second quarterback or your second tight end at the end of the draft. But what I did instead, so like theoretically you would do the 4 different colors. That's why it's a rainbow draft. And also because Milflicious has 2 moms. That's the other piece of it. I thought it'd be funny for that. By the way, if you don't know what Milfalicious is, that's Trey McBride. Pete Overzet had to create a word to describe the player that he wanted next, and he chose Milfalicious. That was another prompt I did for the randomizer. So what the rainbow should look like is the beginning and the end of the draft both have one of each position. That way, the capital buckets make sense. The only reason why I deviated from that and I ended up going 4 and then 4 right after is because of Joe Burrow falling. So if Joe Burrow didn't fall, this draft would look completely different. But he did fall, which I'm happy about. Then I got Isaiah Pacheco, which I think is a decent RB2. Then we took Mark Andrews as a stacking option for Lamar. I feel good about that. I love Isaiah Likely, but and I had a ton of him right when he went down with the injury, so I started getting more and more Mark Andrews exposure, just so if Isaiah Likely doesn't come back to full force this season, which he should, he's already practicing, I believe, but if he doesn't, I still have outs with my Lamar teams, because I do have a lot of Lamar as well. Then we have Higgins and Romeo Dobbs. Romeo Dobbs is a bring back for week 17 with Lamar and my Ravens part of that game. And then I also have the Bengals and Cardinals game covered. I have a Chief, which maybe Isaiah Pacheco eats up a lot of the value from that game. That could be nice. Ramondre Stevenson, Trey Benson. So again, another Cincinnati and Arizona piece. Then we have Pop Douglas, Woody Marks, Torrey Horton, Justice Hill. The Justice Hill pick doesn't feel great. I think I was probably panicking at that point, or maybe auto-drafted Justice Hill. And then we got Dontavian Wicks. And, it's been a good run out for Dontavian Wicks. I have a lot of Jaden Reed, which is very scary for me. But if he could just learn how to catch the ball, Dontavian Wicks will be a very good wide receiver in the NFL for a long time. He'll at least be a rotational piece. And then last pick, I took Isaiah Bond. Not sure why I did. Just seemed like something to do in your 150th draft. And overall, the average CLV was minus 4.9. So yes, I was reaching for players throughout the draft. But again, this might have been an auto selection. The Romeo Dobbs one probably was as well. I might have taken him ahead of ADP just because of the week 17 stack, but that feels like an auto pick. So those are the 6 teams I wanted to go over, and the reason is because I don't think that there is, I don't think there's a reason to feel horrible about a team with a low projection or a low CLV percentile if there's a reason why you're drafting that way. And like I said before, when we went through this, yes, I had a ridiculous amount of reaches on players, but it's a combination of players that I wanted to get exposure to before the end of the year. So that's that. Let's go into player exposures. We'll just go by position. So that's not a quarterback. So my highest owned quarterbacks: Caleb Williams, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Daniel Dimes, Kyler, Sam Darnold, Bryce Young. So I don't feel great about Darnold or Bryce Young. They just fit in nicely as like a QB2, QB3. Aaron Rodgers, again, just a really cheap quarterback. And when everybody's taking two quarterbacks out of the QB window, and a lot of these teams have 3 quarterbacks, are kind of left to do disgusting things like draft 9% of Anthony Richardson, 10% of Aaron Rodgers, probably more Sam Darnold than I want. But a lot of the quarterbacks I was like, even with the field. Let's go to the lowest exposures. Oh, this is for all tournaments. I do have some Shedeur. I'm kind of fading Bo Nix this year. I'm also fading Jared Goff. Stroud's really low. Joe Burrow's really low just because I only want him if I have like a really good stack. Baker Mayfield I'm lower on. I thought his price was too high. Brock, I probably should have gotten more Brock Purdy throughout the summer. Tua, the injury risk scares me. Matt Stafford, same thing. J.J. McCarthy, unproven. Drake May, I think he's kind of overhyped, but I think he'll be an okay real-life quarterback. But I think his theoretical upside is more like Ryan Tannehill, where Ryan Tannehill had some good seasons, but I'm not afraid of him. Dak, I try to get Dak on all of my teams where I have CD. Jaden Daniels, I got a lot more exposure as the summer went on. 6.3 isn't too far away from having exposure even with the field. Oh, one player that you won't see on here is Jared Goff. I drafted 0 Jared Goff teams. That might kill me. That'd be really funny. But I just don't believe in Jared Goff personally. I know he exists. I just don't believe in him as a quarterback. Let's go to tight end. So a lot of Colston Loveland, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, Isaiah Likely. And I stopped drafting Isaiah Likely like halfway through the summer, which is scary. So I have a decent amount of bad value on Isaiah Likely, but if he hits, I have exposure to him, which is what I kind of wanted. I think he's a good real life tight end, and I think as time goes on, he'll become the tight end one in Baltimore once they move on from Mark Andrews. But Mark Andrews is probably younger than most people think. Most people thinks as well. I have a lot of Hawkinson. I have a lot of Kelsey. I think that the Kelsey stuff is way overblown. His price is very reasonable, and he'll get a decent number of touchdowns throughout the season. I think last year was kind of an anomaly. He was pretty banged up. He slimmed down a little bit. I don't know if that'll be good for him or not, but I'm not afraid of having exposure to 9th or 10th round Travis Kelsey. Juwan Johnson, he signed a good contract this summer. I'm surprised he didn't get more steam throughout the summer. Njoku, everybody loves David Njoku. I have some exposure to Harold Fannin. I have a decent amount of Tyler Warren at good prices, Kyle Pitts at good prices. Probably more Jonnu than I really want, but when he started taking some running back touches, that got me intrigued for a little bit. I have a pretty big fade on George Kittle. I think that people are... I think that if the tight end one scores about 200 points, then yeah, Kittle's going to be a fine pick. If Trey McBride or Brock Bowers score about 250, I don't think that Kittle can really get there. I know he has really good points per game stats, and a lot of the the advanced analytics say that George Kittle is a good real life tight end, which is definitely true, and I think he's a very entertaining player to watch. But I'm not afraid of him scoring 250 points in a season. I just don't think he's really going to do that. So you're paying a lot for somebody whose upside is probably about 200 points. If he scores 2 touchdowns in week 17, cool, but any tight end can theoretically do that. He is more likely to do it, but Yeah, not someone I'm really afraid of. So Jared Goff and Kittle are two of the guys I'm kind of fading. I'm also fading Genty and Derrick Henry to a certain extent. Highest drafted running backs: Kenneth Walker, Rashad White, Jonathan Taylor, Taj Brooks. I went on a spree during the middle of the summer where I drafted Taj Brooks in almost every draft. Will Shipley, a lot of Brees, a lot of Alvin, Tyrone Tracy at good prices. Travion, I have a lot of good prices on Travion. Jalen Warren, Keaton Mitchell, Bashal Tutin. So a lot of these guys are over 12%. I kind of like certain running backs and don't like other running backs. Mostert, Kendra Miller, James Conner, I'm kind of fading him. Bucky is somebody that I'm actively drafting against. I think that it's probably a week 17 against the Dolphins. The Dolphins are a pass funnel. I do think that that's a good enough reason to have limited exposure to Bucky. And that I just don't believe in the talent, honestly. I think that people have kind of mind melded him and Chase Brown together. I think Chase Brown's probably better than Bucky. I don't love Chase Brown either, though. I don't have a lot of JCM. That's my main running back takes. Those are my main running back takes, though, is that I don't believe in David Montgomery. I think he's a good player. I just don't want to draft him where he's being drafted. I don't believe in Bucky Irving, and I don't believe in Derrick Henry being a true difference maker. He had a great year last year, and he's not going to sink my portfolio unless he has a ridiculous game in Week 17. And even in that scenario, I still have outs, so I'm fine, getting more exposure to the other players in round 1 and round 2. So you'll see down here, and this is probably the best part about fantasy life. I have 1% of Derrick Henry because I'm taking more Drake London, more Brock Bowers, more Jonathan Taylor. I would take Jonathan Taylor straight up over Derrick Henry. Falling Malik also cost you some Derrick Henry. So I'm happy with how that played out. Let's go to wide receiver. So the wide receivers I was drafting the most this summer were all in the same area of the draft board as well. So DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel, Jaden Reed, Cedric Tillman. I have a lot of Egbuka at good prices. I have a ton of Malik Neighbors. I have a lot of Xavier Legette. And I think a lot of that, I think I kind of sucked out with Coker going down for the beginning of the year and Adam Thielen getting traded away. So I'm happy that I have at least 8% of Legette, but 13% seems a little high. But it makes sense because I did have a lot of Bryce Young, so stacking them together, and all I need is the 1 or 2 touchdown games from Legette throughout the season, which he should get, especially with defenses paying less attention to him because of Tedero McMillan. Drake London, Jalen Waddle, George Pickens, Rashad Bateman. George Pickens is somebody I actually felt like I didn't get enough of, but I still have 12%. I'm not really sure what number I would have been happy with. Then we have Bateman. I want to see where I have Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen at 10.7% with an average CLV of 56. So that was one thing I felt really confident about, especially in the beginning of the summer, is that Keenan will get onto a team. And his price will skyrocket. I also thought the same thing with Amari Cooper. In the beginning of the year, I wanted to have a lot of teams where I went around 16, 17, 18, like Keenan Allen, DeAndre Hopkins, Amari Cooper, because I thought that, they all have decent outs to be relevant throughout the entire season. You don't want to draft them in the middle of the draft because you're missing out on real upside, but at the end of the draft, all you really need is roughly 100 points to 150 points for it to be worth the pick. And I think that they're pretty good bets to hit the 100-point mark. And Hopkins still last year, even in a very bad year for DeAndre Hopkins, had at least 1 or 2 usable weeks and scored around 100 points, I believe. So that's basically it. That's longer than I intended to talk on this subject. But, I hope you found it enjoyable. Feel free to share some of your favorite teams in the comments, the teams that you thought had the best CLV, lowest CLV. Who did you get the best prices on? Do you hate my exposures? Do you hate the teams that I drafted? Just let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.